is the Weigh-In Podcast by Ben Chestnut and the occasional Pop-In Sylvester Merrill. On this week's Weigh-In, we go over the World Championships for Wrestling. That is this week's kind of touch. More or less, we're going to talk about a lot of those medals and a lot of, the what, the happen, the where, the interesting of who and what. And that will be this week's weigh-in. As missed bringing up some other things that come up during the time of recording, but nonetheless, this is some good. It's gonna be some good stuff today. So that is this week's weigh-in. So we get right into this World Championships ordeal. There's just a good worth of things down there. Another thing that's really big, and I decided to bring this up. I probably should have put it in the intro, but I decided to bring it up. IMG has officially, I might have brought this up in the previous episode, or maybe not, has officially announced they're going to be starting wrestling over there at IMG. So I think we're in a new era here, because IMG taking over to run a wrestling program is going to be really interesting. For many reasons, it's going to be interesting, because seeing IMG, a school of that nature, decide to go with wrestling, where will they stand in the high school recruiting game, and will that make changes? Yeah, because IMG is a dormitory. You don't see a lot of these out there, because you just don't. They don't have the financial backing to do something like this. That is because dormitory is expensive, and there are some schools that do it. They're able to have rich alumni, and they're be able to provide themselves. Because IMG, we all know the story goes, it was a tennis academy, and I will fact check myself on that, but it started as a tennis academy, and I would then say, as a tennis academy, they were able to, like, in return, acquire a bunch of land and build. So, and I think that's a really, really, really good thing. So, yeah, so it started in 1978 as a tennis-focused institution. So it started with tennis, and that is a really good thing to be able to, like, pick off from and start tennis. So it's really good thing to start tennis, but that's what this is one thing that I guess that I most would share in any way, shape, or form. Most would share is that you don't have to do everything you want to do up front. You start somewhere, but you're gonna build, and you're gonna build and build with great things. I think that the terms of IMG and what they built themselves to, they are premier. They're very well premier. And having them in the wrestling game is gonna be fairly interesting to see them in the game, see what they could do, because the world of wrestling is changing. We've got what is professional, style freestyle. We've got professional folk style running now. I see a couple of accounts running that folk style. So, and then we got claw, which is kind of a mix of both. So it's like we got professional freestyle, professional folk, and then we got claw, which is a mix of both of them, which is like, wow, you can't ask for it any better. And I think in terms of, like, some of these big schools getting wrestling, it's going to help grow some of these schools that got rid of that sport to say, well, wait a minute. Maybe we need to bring this back, because it is getting bigger. It is getting, I understand that many of the schools may have tossed it out because it's one of those, like, where do you go with it? But it's growing and it's getting bigger. And I think that in terms of that, there's a lot of good things happening. I think in terms of IMG having a wrestling, I think it's gonna be really good. Now, are they gonna capitalize of having a lot of good, you know, wrestlers coming up? Probably. But the difference here is you got to line up the right coaching staff for this. Because you do the right staff, you may get every possible good wrestler coming out of middle school. And so that could be pretty interesting. So they want to launch the thing in August the 26th. So that's the great thing there. So we're talking about next summer. So the question here is, okay, I'd love to see a powerhouse school like that, what that wrestling room is going to look like. That's probably going to be state of the art. If not, you think about that, where are you going from there? Because you're a school that's got, I'm not saying that every school's got money, but you're IMG, you got big backing. They did name Endernock Francoilis. Again, I'll apologize for the butchering of the name, but Endoc Francoilis as the program director, which means, okay, you're off to a good start. You're off to a good start. So they've arrived, and he arrived from the University of North Carolina as an assistant under Rob Knoll. So with prior roles at Stanford, West Point, and Cornell. This is what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about, getting the right guys in the right places. And the way he's going to build that staff out is going to be fairly interesting. So from what I heard is it's a men's and women's program being built, but from what I was able to understand is that they're doing a whole wrestling program. So it's a men's and women's, which is going to be great. I think that this is going to get really good. And for that, that's going to build, IMG always changed. They changed the game. They changed the game a long while ago because they added boarding to their school. It wasn't a school where you say, okay, if I'm from New Jersey, I can't go to IMG. No, it's like, hey, you can go to IMG, you can board at IMG. So that's a really big thing. And to be able to offer that is not easy. Why you don't see a lot more of those is because it's expensive. It's an expensive offering, and it's not easy to offer that. You have to have a really big backing to do something like that, offer boarding, and it's got to be able to make you enough money to be, because it's a great area that in IMG boards all the way up to middle school, by the way. Well, I'm not 100% sure on boarding all the way up to middle school, but I'll fact check myself before we get too far on that one. um uh so yeah, they offer it specifically through grades 6 through 12. So yeah, like IMG allows you to literally board in middle school. So it's a huge backing, and it's a lot that a lot of other schools, and I'm not saying that, I'm not speaking just in terms of New Jersey, because I know most of I relate a lot of this stuff to New Jersey. I'm speaking in terms of like everything, that it's just it's one of those things where it's like, hey, you know, what's going on there? Like, it's because it's a lot. You look at the cost of starting an institution like that. I know the wrestling fans would love to hear. I mean, not most of this, but the older audience would love to hear the breakdown. The breakdown is very simple. Not only do you have to build state standard dorm rooms and all of this stuff, because you're private, but you gotta, I mean, not state standard dorm rooms, classrooms, and you gotta build stuff to teach. You then have to build all these dorm rooms where you're going to dorm the kids. anybody knows, cost to build ain't cheap. And then you're amidst that, you got to have a dining hall because if you're dorming anybody, I'm pretty sure somewhere it's a requirement. You got to have a dining hall. Now you got a dining hall, so you're spending a bulk of what you would spend. It's basically, I'm not saying college prices, but it it probably is up there. So yeah, college prices about 93,900 for boarding students, 74,900 for a day student. So it it's about a huge difference. Let's see what that actually translates to in terms of the fans. That's a $19,000 difference. So it tells you that they're operating 19,000. You just per student off that dormitory. Because if you're a day student, obviously you're still you're still going. You're still using stuff like dining hall. So So there's meal plans with all of that. So it's like it's not even it's like college style, but you don't see so much of that because it's expensive. The backing of telling somebody, hey, you've got to pay almost $100,000 to have your kid in a high school for almost 4 years, which comes to about $400,000. You look at that and you say, wow, that's and I say 400 because that's just tuition. That's not if they're in a sport. That's not so there's a lot of that going on, but fairly interesting. And if we get to the topic at hand for the episode, we talked about what was some of the things going around. So we had Kylie Walker who took bronze at 76 kilo. We had Helen Maroulis, world champ. We had Kyle Snyder win gold. We had Real Woods bronze at 65 kilo. We had Trent Hillay, uh, gold at 92 kilo. Levi Haynes got a silver. So there's a little bit of that going on with some of the medaling. But real crazy, real crazy, real nice with that going on. But if you didn't hear, the U23 Worlds for 26 is confirmed in Las Vegas, and the Senior Pan Am Games is in Iowa. So that's going to be good. If you aren't already thinking about going to U23 Worlds, that would be 26 would be the time to go. To head out Vegas and see some good old wrestling. Because people don't understand, U23 World, any world championship that you compete for, it's good wrestling. It's good wrestling. It's really good wrestling. So there's good things going on with wrestling. Quite a few people able to go out there and place and do that in this, and that's really great. Good thing for USA. We'll see where they fall through the ends of this, because at the time of recording, I don't know. I haven't, followed that closely, but it's fairly simple to say that, many don't understand why it's so big of a school like IMG to say we're going to add a wrestling program. Out of all the sports, they don't have to say, hey, to turn around and say, oh no, we're adding a wrestling program. Like, we need to get in the wrestling game. And that should already right there tell you a lot. That should tell you enough to what you need to know, that they want to get in a wrestling game. You know, that's a really small thing that is to happen. That is a really good thing that I think is really good in terms of it, and we'll be able to understand. We'll be able to understand that and what it'll do for wrestling itself and the community of wrestling. It'll do really great things, and I really do believe that. I really do believe that. So that's going to be a great thing all around for wrestling, all around everywhere for wrestling. So that's a really good, point to take for wrestling in any which way. That's a really good thing to have done and be doing. Have done and be doing are really great things for wrestling, and I think that's amazing that they're getting that off the off the grissom, that they're going to be able to get that going and have a wrestling program, because it's just going to be great to see how they were able to compete when he lines up that coaching staff. The difference is going to be they're probably going to get a lot of recruits because they're dormitory, and then you're going to have scholarships, and it's going to look good. It's going to be good, and I think that in terms of wrestling, it's gonna be a good thing. Anytime a school starts a wrestling program, it's a good thing. And I know a lot of people may say, well, it's just high school level. It's a good thing when they're that big of a school that has national, always national coverage about, oh, IMG football, IMG this, IMG. And now they got a wrestling going. That's going to be good. That's going to be good. That's going to be real nice. Like we say on the way in, we've had quite a few wrestling guests on here when we had Egan. That was, great to learn. We still are gonna do it, man. We're still saying this, and we're still gonna do it. We're still gonna go out there, Rhode Island, RW, to Roger for at least one wrestling match out there. One match we're gonna go out there for, and we keep saying it, and we just have not done it, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. That's something that we're definitely gonna get done. Amidst any of that, there's just a lot of great stuff going on with all of that, and I think we're able to do really great things, and that's good because good things are going to happen here. And that's just one thing that I say is IMG gets a program, at least going to go out there for at least a dual meet men's, women's. You have to. Can't just go out for men's. Got to go out men's, women's. Same thing. My college now is a women's program, and same thing. I'm gonna get out there for at least men's, women's dual meet. That would be something to partake. But don't you worry, fans of the weigh-in. I will get you the scoop wherever I go. There will be a scoop. There will be video. There will be. I try to tend to do the weigh-in in a way that that when I do show up, I tend to want to give you the scoop. That's the great part. I always want to give you the scoop. I try to, and I will. There's no other way to look at it. There's no better way to look at it. It's like, hey, give us the scoop. Yeah, you'll get a scoop. And I think that's really great things that goes on any which way that's done. And I think that's a really good thing. No matter how you draw it, it's a really great thing to go and, partake some of those dual meets. But Really great. No matter how you, no matter how you draw it out, it's really good. That's the great part. That's really good about that is that how it it tends to take itself in good areas and good places, and I think I think that's a good thing. And no matter how you look at it, I think that's a good thing. And I think that's something that we all can free official benefit is that, the, the sport of wrestling, I feel like is growing because every time I turn around, I see a school starting or popping up a program. I think it's a good thing. And we have NCAA women's wrestling to thank for that. As much as all the others may want to have their opinions on that, no, we have them to thank for it because they're like, oh, let's get a women's program. But if you never had a men's, you're starting both of them because they're like, oh, we should get in the women's wrestling game, and then they're starting both of them because you got to fairly look at it. Obviously, I'm not going to have all the costs related to getting a program up and going, but you look at once you buy mats, once you figure out you got a wrestling room for them, you got mats, you know, and a lot of the stuff is shared, like shared time on the mat, shared like I say, like it comes down to okay, if you have a director of wrestling, you got his salary, you got the coaches between two teams, but once you have the room done and you kind of have a come basis, and you got a room done, obviously, your separate costs are locker rooms and all of that stuff, but you look at once they have a women's program, they say to themselves, well, why don't we have a men's? Because it kind of goes hand in hand because some of the equipment you're able to cross over. You know, I know now they're starting to come out with women specific uh, equipment. Like they got a whole company that's starting up that starts the women's wrestling singlet. Um, the difference is they patent the product, which I feel for them is that's great, but a lot of these women that are big enough that you need to be wearing that singlet to get you far enough, they're signed with like Root is, they're signed with companies, so they won't be able to because you patent the product, not where it's like, hey, you're allowing it to exclusively be sold by a company. It's kind of like they're trying to bring this up themselves, which is really good. Like I'm not trying to hate against it. I think it's absolutely a perfect thing what they're doing, but you make your road a little harder when you can't really like you have a patent on it. So that's the best part is that nobody else can go make that singlet, but you've also got to think like it gives you a lot of bargaining room, but it also gives you that once that's out on obviously it's out on the market, but once you do that, you put yourself in the room of you've got to renew the patent. You gotta renew the patent because if it turns into like fidget spinners, everybody's gonna come out with this. And the problem is everybody can come out with possibly very differently not similar clothes, but a style of design that could possibly be close. But at the same time, there's not much you can really if you're those big companies, not much you can really do in terms of that because they've already started something. So it's kind of like that's a good thing what they're doing, but to get the biggest names, you're gonna have to you got to money drop a lot for that. You got to get some of them up there and sponsored by it. And I mean like big athletes. You got to get some of those big ones to help you move it along. I get trying to find some D3 D2, but I think your angle is more Division One, but the problem with that is obviously a Division One school. They're not going to be wearing, it's school singlet. So I say you got to get like somebody who will go to like world team trials like that and say, hey, here's a SIG, wear this. But I think for them it's going to get fairly interesting. I think that's a good thing of what they're doing. I think they'll get really. I think they're gonna work well. I think they got good backing. I don't think it's gonna not go anywhere. They did some of the right things by getting their patents, so the bigger companies can't just come out and make something. But you also eliminate the non-bargaining chip. Somebody saying, "Oh, I'll just make this. I don't have to get what they're doing with this patent." Yeah, so it's gonna, obviously there gonna be a lot of offers to want this thing that a big company is gonna want it. I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up at Rudis. I'm just being quite frankly honest, because they could share partnership with a company that's going to sell it. So they could still run this and say, this is our product, but we have now partnered with a Rudis. So now Rudis can offer it, and they're still going to, build price shit. You know what I mean? Like still say, hey, Rudis, this is what we're going to cost you to do this, or this is however it may go. But I think that's I think it's a good thing when something evolves, when a sport evolves, to be able to be accepting of another half of a sport that has been around for years, but has never had a thing like this. To be able to now provide that I think you're going to start to see some teams start to get a partnership going, or you're going to see somebody try to just outright buy it. And the either or, it may be interesting. But it's always good. I know this ain't no business channel, but it's always good to go patent first, because now you eliminate anybody else that can build price and sell it. Say, hey, I have a special only for women's wrestling singlet, because wrestling singlet design itself it's fairly different. Obviously it's not. They're all the same. There hasn't been much change to that. Obviously that has not been a patent product, because patents aren't cheap, and that's a good way to look at it. Patents aren't cheap. When you look at it from my angle, patents aren't cheap. So that's one thing that I would say. Those things aren't really cheap, but nonetheless, we're in the end of an epi. I would like to sit here and tell you guys, yet it's another epi of the weigh-in. I'd love to give these epis. This one was a little off the topic of what it was supposed to start as, which, I mean, that always happens, but it is what it is. This is an episode of the Weigh-In Podcast by Benoit Chestnut and the occasional Poppin' Slash Romero. That is this week's Weigh-In. Weigh-In now.
The Weigh-In, where stories